Most of you know me, but I am Jose Marcus. I'm the Director of Plan Getting here at the Inland Empire Community Foundation. I want to welcome you to our Professional Advisor Council meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Suyi Chin. Thank you, Suyi, for being our sponsor. It's we've got a few minutes to talk about the bank.
Great, thank you, Jose. And it's great to see everyone, especially you, all of you. It's good to see you, Elizabeth. Haven't seen you for a while. So for some of you guys don't know that Manufacturers Bank, we are actually a full service business bank, primarily working with small to medium sized business clients that kind of help them with the line of credits, cash management service. So especially in today's environment with interest rate going up. So this is a good time to kind of take a look at it, revisit, say, is there anything that we need to refinance it? Feel free to reach out to us on that. And I'm also going to turn it over to Richard, which is going to give you a little bit of background in terms of what we do with the, trust, probate, on our fiduciary program. So Richard, you want to take it over and I will share your slides.
Yes, thank you, Suyi. Thank you for the introduction. And as always, just a big thank you to Mr. Marquez for allowing us to be part of this great group. As Suyi mentioned, we are from Manufacturers Bank. We are headquartered in downtown Los Angeles, but we work out of our Brea location. And we're again, proud sponsors of the annual PAC webinar. A little overview of Manufacturers. Our doors opened in 1962 to serve the growing apparel industries of Los Angeles. We now serve the needs of many middle market business and small businesses, as well as professionals under the umbrella of Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation. Not only do we only focus on business, but we also service the needs of trust and estate professionals, which include attorneys, CPAs, and other professionals focusing on trust and estate, probate, as well as fiduciary services. So of the many trust and estate products that we offer, what sets us apart from many of our existing clients is our niche for being able to open complex accounts with court order requirements. We can accommodate for multiple administrators and signers within, whether within or out of the state or even out of the country. We also have the capability to offer multi-million-dollar FDIC insured accounts up to 150 million, so as to avoid having to spread the funds out over multiple banks. And the client only has to worry about receiving one statement a month and one 1099 a year instead of receiving multiple. And we have a streamlined process. So if the client is either not local or just doesn't feel comfortable as of yet to set foot in our branch, we can provide documents to them via FedEx, and they can send it right back to us at no cost to them the same way. And rest assured, with their accounts, there are no minimum account balances required to be maintained for your clients. So no account is too big or small. So I want to thank all of you, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us in the chat, and we will provide our contact information.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. And I agree with Liz's comment that she put in the chat. Manufacturers Bank is great. We work with a lot of banks in our two county areas, but we've been very appreciative to Manufacturers Bank and their support. Now I have the privilege of introducing the next IECF staff person, and that is Bree Grissett-Smith. She's been with us, I don't know, how long now, Bree?
6 months plus, since November.
Wow. That's quick. And she is our new Senior Vice President of Charitable Giving, and she's going to provide an update on all the activities, or many of the activities that are occurring at the foundation. Bree, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jose. And thank you to our incredible sponsors, again, to Manufacturers Bank, our incredible speakers and experts who are here today to impart some wisdom, as well as the incredible staff that really makes up IECF. But we couldn't do it without all of you. So thank you so much for joining us today for this wonderful presentation and getting to learn with us. This year, we are celebrating our 80th year in the community. We're incredibly proud that we've been able to serve the community for that many years as a community foundation, and have really expanded over that time, starting in Riverside and then including San Bernardino, and of course, our treasured desert communities. This year, with our 80th campaign, we actually are having some board-led signature funds, which are really a special way for us to underscore the power of community foundations. And that really is working with people like you to allow folks who want to be philanthropic with their assets, not only, of course, cash, but complex assets, to be able to do that, and for us to be able to help their dreams take flight. This year, we are launching 8 new funds. One, the CILO Fund for Latino Empowerment is chaired and seated by board member Jesse Melgar. And it's really by and for Latinos. It's the first of its kind in our community, and we're thrilled to have that incredible support of a signature fund at the Community Foundation. We also just launched an arts fund, and hopefully as I'm saying this and you're thinking about clients and people who might be interested, these are wonderful ways to engage around passion and cause with your clients. So many of you may know Ann Sheffer. She's been involved with the arts for many, many years. And so she has helped seed that fund for us as well, really trying to make sure that we bring more resources into the community around the arts. We also have the Black Equity Fund, which was established in 2020 and is a regional pooled fund to advance racial equity and combat anti-Black racism in our community. We have the Here for Good Fund, and many of you may have heard of this if you've been involved with us for a number of years. We established that in 1992 to provide annual support to the foundation's operating fund. We also have the Community Impact Fund, which is continued support of our equity lens and really is helping to bring capacity in those areas. We also have the Journalism and Media Fund, which is chaired and seated by our board president, Dr. Paulette Brown-Hines, to support local and regional journalism and media and build a pipeline of talent for our sector and for our region. We have the Salton Sea Fund, which is also brand new. This is chaired and seated by board member Jeremy Hobbs. Many of you may know him as well. He is in the desert and he runs our charitable giving and marketing committee. And really it's to build the social, economic, and environmental resilience of the Salton Sea and surrounding communities. And then finally, the Women's Giving Fund, which is chaired by board member Nefertiti Long, who we all affectionately refer to as Neff. And that's established to educate women about philanthropy and provide support to nonprofits that are local. So currently we have $130 million under management. That's with 407 funds. We, again, are centering around equity, racial, gender, and economics in our community. And that's really a cross-cutting theme around other incredibly important causes. And many of you know we've been trying to change and shift the narrative for our region, because if you look at us in comparison to Orange County, San Diego, and Los Angeles, I think we can all agree when we compare $25 that we're getting versus $250 per capita, we should be getting more of our fair share. And so we're going to keep pounding on that drum with your help and hopefully lifting up our community and so doing that. We've distributed $19 million in grants to scholarships, and the main focus for us is really building a culture of philanthropy through growth and impact, and really focusing again on the causes that are most important. That's why I'm really excited about our conversation today. I know we're going to be talking about how we can impart that kind of wisdom and those really critical conversations with clients to make sure that they're able to think through with you what their dreams are, and we are here to help. So what you might not know is we have over 14,000 nonprofits. Many of them have a budget of only $50,000 or more. And so recently we have started something called the IE Giving Hub. It's for community members and philanthropists, and they'll be able to explore hundreds of nonprofits by name and cause and make informed charitable decisions and give all in one place. And that really is our hope. This was made possible by the Caravanserai Project and Wells Fargo, so a big thank you to them as well. It's going to be an easily searchable database. It'll help donors and, even more importantly, professional advisors, funders, and local residents to better understand the Inland Empire's nonprofit community and discover how to engage in the causes that they care most about. So as I kind of shared with you, but just to underscore it again, our foundation giving per capita is less than 50% of the Central Valley's and 1/9 of Los Angeles County. So we have some work to do. But in building a culture of philanthropy with your help, we know we can change the narrative, and we know we can bring more dollars into this community. So that's it. Just a big, huge thank you again for your work, your efforts. Please always rely on us as just a support to your continued efforts in making sure you bring a quality of excellence in everything you do with your clients. And we're just here to support that in any way possible. So with that, I want to say again, a special thanks to the team and especially to Jose, who has been such a treasured staff person for so long with IECF. And it's really a pleasure and a privilege to work with you, Jose. So back to you.
Thank you very much, Bree. It's been fun for the last 6 months. And yeah, I've been here 15 years, so it's quite a while. But I did want to make, before we get into the presentation, I do want to make one more comment. And that is, we talk about this being a professional advisor council, and it's really an opportunity to bring people who are in different professions like yourselves together. But we do have a special recognition, what we call our professional advisor champions. And these are individuals who are advisors who have referred clients to us, who those clients have opened up the funds. I do want to recognize those individuals. Teresa Ryan is one of them. She's referred a number of clients to us. Sergio Bohan, Neil Weiner, Marcia Campbell, and I think that's it that I can see from this group. So I just want to, it's a special shout out to these individuals who really have gone above and beyond and have referred clients to us who in the long run actually supports the mission, which is building philanthropy in our region. So I get the honor now of introducing the panel and the facilitator for today's program. Basically, we're going to be focused on your client wants to be philanthropic. What's next? How to ensure the client's legacy and charity selective work in concert. And I'm very excited. We normally have one presenter when we do these professional advisor council meetings, but I felt in talking to a number of people that advise me, such as Joanna and Elizabeth and others in Marcia, that it might be important to maybe in this particular subject, have a much more broader description and discussion. So I asked Jim Normandin, who's also has been advising me over the last couple of years on how to work with professional advisors, to help me out with this project. So I asked Jim to facilitate. And Jim basically is an outstanding professional in the plan giving field. Jim spent the last 32 years with Memorial Medical Center Foundation in Long Beach, and the last 10 years as president. His frequent seminars and speaking engagements to professional audiences across the country have earned him a reputation as one of the leading specialists in the charitable gift and tax planning field. He has served as an expert witness involving inter vivos and testamentary charitable planning.
I gotta get off this
Jim
call.
counsels individuals, families, and their advisors on the best method to optimize income, minimize taxation, facilitate meaningful wealth transfer, and meet their philanthropic objectives. For nonprofit organizations, Jim has assisted with the design, implementation, and management of all aspects of a successful major and plan giving program. Jim is also the co-founder and faculty with the American Institute for Philanthropic Studies, independent public education foundation, devoted to increasing awareness, training, and participation in plan giving professionals and the legal, tax, and financial communities in charitable giving. Also, one last point about Jim. Jim is an Eagle Scout, and he's a graduate of California State University of Long Beach. He serves on the boards of the Orange Catholic Foundation, California State University of Long Beach 49er Foundation, and the Farmers and Merchants Trust Company. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jim, to begin the process of our conversation discussion today. And you'll be taking up to introduce the other panelists that will be joining with you. Turn it over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Jose, and I appreciate that opportunity to be here today. But more importantly, I'm joined by a rather distinguished panel of experts. There's an age-old theory that it takes a village. So that's what's going to happen today during this presentation and throughout in our commentaries. But I'm joined by Joanna, who introduced herself as a professional fiduciary and a lot of experience in that arena. Elizabeth Bodden, estate planning attorney, par excellence, who's also one of the awardees, I think, a year and a half ago for the plan giving professional. And Marcia, a CPA who has a specialty in dealing with these seniors. And that's when everything kind of moves to the head of the class. It's like, okay, it's now time. We got to make all these decisions. So we're all going to add a little commentary to our comments today, which also suggests that we'd like your feedback. This is a discussion, as Jose said, and anything you'd like to bring up, talk about, maybe throw it in the chat, and maybe Jose, if I could ask you to monitor the chat
Sure.
and pose a question here and there, that would be great. So am I going to get control of the slides? Or? The first slide, I talk about philanthropies in vogue and not limited to the rich and famous. Granted, many of you work with people with high net worth, and we all enjoy working with those clients, but not everybody is so-called high net worth. And what's amazing is how many people, because of the guidance of many of the people in this program today, make the leap into being philanthropic. And our purpose today is kind of cover some of the bases and how to make that better, how to avoid some of the issues we're going to talk about. But first of all, philanthropies in vogue. Some of you may recall that in the late 90s, there was a white paper out of Boston College by Havens and Skirvish about the tremendous transformation of wealth. And that over the generations, there was going to be, like Carl Sagan, billions and billions of stars. There were going to be billions and billions of dollars flowing into charities. Some of that materialized, but not necessarily to the extent they thought it would. And then in 2013, they made some adjustments. And then in 2017, there were some further adjustments. I would venture to say that within the last year or two, we're starting to see a lot of this transformation. And what is happening is the wealth transfer is happening. My father was part of that greatest generation. And at age 99, he went to his great reward in 2018. He wasn't a philanthropist through his will, but he did what he could. After raising 10 kids, there's not much left. There's not too many shekels left over. But we finished his pledge to his church in the building campaign, and that was very important to him that he was a participant in that kind of thing. So I want to introduce you really quickly to a guy I used to know through my athletic club. His name was Patrick Cadigan. He wasn't my best friend, I wasn't his, but we knew each other. We would always say hello and here and there. Patrick was a man who self-made and became rather successful.
Here it is.
And as a result of that, at his demise, and just prior to his demise, he created a foundation. And last year, his daughter and his son distributed $42 million to the Claremont Graduate University. So many of you are up there close to that. It's a $42 million, transformative in many respects. He also made a $49 million gift to Boston Catholic Prep School. And again, transformative because it's going to build a whole new, what they're calling it, an engagement center where for athletics, counseling, it's going to be absolutely spectacular. And I would suggest to you, that's just the beginning of what they're going to do. Here was a local guy, grew up in Boston, moved west, made it rather significant fortune, and is now sharing it. And then there's Mary F. Nelson. And Mary F. Nelson has passed away last year. I did not know Mary. I am just knowing that we are receiving some of the charity that I work with is receiving a small portion of her largesse. She had an IRA that she left to 4 charities. The whopping account balance upon her death was $88,500. But the organization is receiving $22,133. We're overwhelmed at her generosity. And I can assure you that her generosity will make a difference. So I was just talking about Mary Nelson, and she left the $22,000 to a couple of organizations I do some work with. And there was a library who was receiving $22,000. And like Bree was talking about earlier, there's so many organizations out there whose budget, it's 50, 60, 80, 100,000. When they get a gift of 22,000, it's like, wow, what happened here? And how wonderful it is because it is transformative for that organization. And then you have Mackenzie Scott, who is just on a philanthropic rampage, if you will, and what a beautiful testament and the things that she's doing. And I find it interesting that she and her team were deciding who gets the money. There's no submit a proposal to us and tell us how you want to do something. She's doing her own due diligence, and they are deciding who gets it. And when Long Beach City College was announced that they would receive $20 million, I can assure you, Paul Hood looked at it and goes, oh, this is just amazing. I had some parameters, but that's okay. So I think the key here is that everybody needs to realize that philanthropy is transformative. I don't care how big the gift, how small the gift is. If it's important to the individual donor, it should be important to us as advisors to help them make that gift. And that's really what we're here to do, is help make the gift. And I'm going to ask any of my colleagues who would like to add a commentary about any of this. It's welcome.
I'm seeing with my clients that they may not be high income or high, they may not have large assets, but they are increasing their donations. So you might have a client that has $240,000 in income, but they're giving away $40,000 in that same year. And I'm seeing that on a number of clients where that dollar amount of the gifts are going up. Has nothing to do with taxes. It's just the way they want to give back.
I agree, and I concur. So our next slide is the objectives, our objectives today. And much of these objectives are focused on dotting I's and crossing T's. I like to use baseball analogies. So a lot of times, somebody's called in to bat cleanup. Maybe a designated hitter, and the reality is they haven't got enough runs, and they need somebody to get those people around the bases and score the runs. But they aren't always successful. And it's planning. We got the right hitter who can meet the ball that pitcher's trying to show them. So our objective today is kind of talk a little bit about some of the issues that come up. And I'm going to begin with, what charities does your client want to support? Is it local? Is it national? Sometimes we don't necessarily realize that it may be a national charity, and do they want the money sent to the headquarters, let's say in Philadelphia, and distributed accordingly to that vehicle, or do they really want to give it to the local chapter because they'd like to see the philanthropy, their hard-earned dollars, go to work locally? Again, every donor is going to be different. I've dealt with a donor who wanted it to go to the national because national facilitated the research, and his interest was research. But I'll ask Elizabeth, what do you see, Elizabeth?
So I had shared with Jim, that when a client comes in to see me or their, any other estate planning attorney, often they'll just say, hey, I want to support the Red Cross, or I want to support, Boys and Girls Clubs or Salvation Army, or, any host of national charities. And as a donor, they have no idea that how the inner workings of the organization are. And the fact that, if they just write into their will or their trust, I want to make a gift to the Red Cross, that under default policies of the organization, that may mean it ends up benefiting a community or a program that isn't necessarily what they supported. And so it becomes really important as an advisor for me to ask them, where do you want this to benefit? And have you spoken with the organization about how best to do that?
Exactly. Marcia, you probably got a couple experiences with respect to, especially your clientele I suspect they get a little picky sometimes.
They do get picky. And I find that after the fact, I find out that the kids know what mom and dad wanted the money to go to, but the way it was written in the document doesn't necessarily mean that it goes there. So I think that working with it on a regular, or working with your attorney and doing that planning is really, really important. I also think that looking at it on a regular basis over the years is important also, because today the donor's plan may be different than 5 years from now, 2 years from now, or the organization may have changed or whatever. So that needs to be a consistent thing to be looked at. Not only, are the beneficiaries the same, that kind of thing, did they get divorced or whatever, but the donor needs to look at the charities also.
I agree. So our next objective is how to verify the legal and correct name of the charity or charities selected. And I'm going to turn to Elizabeth again. She's had a fair amount of experience in here.
Sure. So, it's another thing where I find often that clients will come in and say, I want to leave money to, guide dogs for the blind. And so the lawyer just writes that in. And later we discover, there's multiple organizations whose names are all some variant on guide dogs for the blind, and none of which match exactly. And so I always recommend for myself and my colleagues that we go to the IRS Charity Check website, which comes up really easily if you Google IRS Charity Check, and just get the full legal name of the organization and make sure it, matches up with what our client has told us, to ensure that the money gets to the organization they want.
Yeah, I happen to work with an organization known as the Adult Achievement Center. I work with an organization called,
Thank you.
I work with an organization called the Adult Achievement Center of Orange County. And about 6 years ago, with the input from leadership and support from the board, they changed the name to My Day Counts. And so we had to make sure that it wasn't just a DBA, that we incorporated all this, because there are perhaps people who already have put in their will or trust the Orange County Adult Achievement Center. So there's a track to do that. And we got some good help from that corporation's legal counsel to do that. What about the selected charities? Are they 501c3s versus a 501c4? And or does it matter? So I'm going to ask everybody to chime in on this, beginning with Elizabeth.
So I mentioned to Jim that I had a client who recently passed away who left a large gift to the Sierra Club. And, her estate wasn't subject to estate tax. And so even though her gift was significant, it didn't matter that we knew the Sierra Club is a 501c4 organization and not a C3. But it can matter if the estate or the trust is counting on getting an estate tax charitable deduction, because only gifts to 501c3s qualify for that deduction. And so understanding and just making sure in advance can really help the client plan appropriately.
Yeah, Marcia, you have any experience in this arena? Or?
Well, I think a lot of it is educating.
They have to up with that.
Educating the clients as to which
Other one.
organization they are,
It's pretty good
and
too.
if they are going
Ours
to
will-
get a deduction, or if they're not. And if it's the Sierra Club and they really want to do that, it's probably okay with the donor not to get the deduction. So
Yeah.
it should all be about what the,
Joanna?
the donor wants.
You see this?
I do see this, and quite frankly, when it gets to me, it really doesn't matter because it's there. It's in the document. It is what it is. So hopefully the planners did their job. Hopefully the donors know what their intent was, and that is being followed, because by the time I get it, it just is what it is.
And it's sometimes that donor is not making a gift directly to, let's say, the Sierra Club initially, but they are making them a remainder, because maybe it's a testamentary trust or an annuity for the benefit of an individual or individuals, with the remainder to the organization. So there could be some effect. Again, it may not really matter, but it's important to, again, dot those I's and cross those T's.
And I just find that, I was just going to say, I just find that clients don't appreciate the difference. So they don't necessarily know this is a 501c3 versus C4. So we kind of have to fill in those blanks for them.
Yeah, I just went through that with a fellow who I tried to explain to him that the Knights of Columbus has a foundation back east to accept his gifts, and it can direct it to anything, anywhere, any part of the Knights of Columbus field of interest he wants. But he really wanted to give it to the local chapter. I said, the local chapter is a 501c4. And if you want an income tax deduction, then it's not going to help. And he says, well, I'd kind of like a deduction. And I said, then let's help you do it the right way the first time.
I just wanted to mention, Jim, Elizabeth mentioned the IRS website. Also, if you're interested in learning more about nonprofits and their current status, there's another website called Guidestar. And Guidestar can give you information about the nonprofits, federal ID number. It can also identify their finances and whether they've submitted their 990 reports, which nonprofits need to submit on an annual basis. So there's a lot of great information on both the IRS website as well as Guidestar. So I just wanted to add that in, Jim.
So before I retired in 2016 from Memorial Medical Center Foundation, I found that the most powerful sentence I could talk to a donor about was, what do you want us to do with your money? And for many times it was like, whoa. I said, what do you want us to do with your money? So when we get it, what do you want us to do? Which led to a gift agreement. But before I talk about that, I'd really like to get Joanna and Marcia's and as well as Elizabeth's input on this. So Joanna, I'll start with you. You see gift agreements?
I see gift agreements.
Do you
And I
see
have to-
cloudy gift agreements?
I see, well, this is the interesting thing about gift agreements. Sometimes, yes, they can be cloudy. Now, I do find some that work out very well, and it's usually to do with how easy the gift is to give. If it's money, that's easy. You give me good language, tell me what to do with it. It's easy. What gets a little more cloudy for me is the gift, if the gift is a tangible, like art or something of the sort that is different and it's not cash. And that's when I really want to make sure that that gift agreement tells me what I'm supposed to be doing, what I'm supposed to be making sure the charity knows is supposed to be done with that gift.
Marcia?
I have not really worked with any gift agreements, so I can't chime in on this.
That's a good point to bring up. We'll come back to that one. Elizabeth?
So to me, you're ahead of the game if you have a gift agreement, because it means the client has spoken with the charity about what they want to do, and there's been some dialogue, which already puts everybody ahead of the game and making sure that what the client wants to have happen with their money is going to happen. And that I just feel like is never to be underestimated, because it's really easy for me as a lawyer to have a client come in and say, you know, I want to leave money to the Inland Empire Community Foundation to support, you know, local scholarships. And I might write that in the document. But if there hasn't been a conversation with, you know, Jose and his team, the client may pass away. They may not have known it was going to come. And we might all be guessing on what the client wanted. And so I love the opportunity to do a gift agreement while they're here.
And I agree with Elizabeth. If you have the opportunity, you want to do it. Unfortunately, sometimes donors just sit down with their advisor. They say, it goes to ABC organization. This is what I want it to do. And we're going to see a case or two shortly where the charity gets it, goes, I don't know if we can do that. And then all of a sudden you're looking for judicial reformation, or you're trying to find the heirs. What do you think your mom and dad wanted? What do you think, you know, Aunt Seal wanted, you know, da, 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 da. And again, it gets cloudy, and unfortunately it can get contentious too at the same time. But we'll cover that shortly. So what if a charity is too small and the gift is too large for the charity? Some of you are saying, is that possible? It is possible. So Joanna, you want to address that first?
Sure. Actually, I think charities, it's just like kids. If they don't have the experience to handle it, then it can be a problem. And if you have a sizable gift and you give it to a charity who's never had any experience managing it, it can possibly not be handled in a way that it probably could have been had they had the experience. So you do have to be careful and mindful when you're giving to a charity that they're able to handle it. And sometimes maybe if it's something that you love and it's too small, bring in the community foundation, bring in somebody that can kind of oversee how that happens. Also, when we talk about what if it's too small? And that would be something like, I recently had a case where a charity was named to get a property that had a mobile home on it. And there was a life estate of the dear friend of the donor. And they were like, whoa, 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 I'm not sure I want that gift. It might be too small for us. So it took quite a bit of back and forth to get them to understand what it was and that they actually wanted it, that it wasn't too small for what they were looking to do.
Great. Marcia, you see this or?
No, I haven't seen anything with a size like that. Charities normally will take anything they can get. I do have a concern. I don't do them anymore, but the 990s and audit trails and stuff for charities might come into that if the gift is too large for that size
Very
of charity.
comfortable.
But again, I
Thank
don't do that kind of work anymore, so.
Elizabeth, I suspect you've seen this more than once, so.
I have, and actually the experiences I've had are surprising in that they were gifts to large national charities, but the gifts themselves were too large. And what I mean by that is I had one case where a donor left $2 million to an organization to fund a charitable gift annuity for their, longtime employee. And the charity came to me, the charity was my client, and they said, we can't write a gift annuity that big. Can we have 6 charities each issue a gift annuity for 1/6 of the $2 million? And the documents didn't allow that. But had we had a gift up front, had we had a conversation up front, that would have been something that we could have worked out with the donor. And, I've had other experiences where someone leaves a really large gift to an organization for a specific purpose, and then the organization says that's there aren't enough projects that we can spend that money on, and so it'll end up just sitting in a fund and not being used. And so the larger the gift, the more important it is to have a conversation with the charity up front, just to make sure it's going to fulfill the client's wishes. And my clients, at least, are often really reluctant to call the charity because they don't want to get on the radar of the charity and all of a sudden have everybody start calling them, for more gifts. And so I'll often offer to them, hey, look, I can call on your behalf anonymously and say, I have a client who's looking to make a gift for this sort of purpose. Is this something that would work and make sense and help kind of figure out what we're going to put into the documents without having to reveal the client's identity until they're gone.
Right. Very good. Thank you all. So what if the selected charity no longer exists or has changed its purpose or isn't qualified upon the client's passing? So it's a testamentary gift. I'll turn back to you, Elizabeth, to kind of address some of the issues here.
Yeah. So if the charity still exists, but has just changed its purpose, the gift will still go to the charity unless the purpose of the gift is restricted. But in all the other situations where the charity doesn't exist anymore or isn't qualified when the gift is designed to be made, I think Joanna is the one who pointed out when we were discussing this before today's event that you've got to look at the documents and hopefully if they're drafted well, they're going to have an alternative and say, if this organization isn't here, then it goes to an alternative.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Jim, for the community foundation, for example, if someone makes a gift to us and they want to support a particular charity, when they pass away, we usually have successor advisors. And then when the successor advisor passes away, we can also continue with having our board of directors engaged in helping ensure that the funds in that particular fund get directed to the charity that the donor initially wanted to support. So we make sure that we support the donor's intent. And that's really what we do in regards to agreements, as well as working with the clients that are charitable, have a charitable intent.
Well, and this was pointed out earlier by your vice president there, that the nice thing about the community foundation, it's a resource for a lot of nonprofit organizations, large or small, but especially those smaller ones. You can handle the bigger gift. You can handle the redistribution of the wealth, so to speak, over the period of years design in concert with their wishes, whether it's that maybe they said, if these 2 particular organizations are to get 50% of my support, and I'd like you to find other organizations that do some kind of restriction, and you have the resources to find those and distribute the wealth accordingly. So it's kind of nice to see that. In fact, it's great. Once upon a time, as a member of a nonprofit organization, and we wanted everybody to make the gift to us, but I've learned very quickly that even when I was the president of the organization, if you wanted to make your gift to the community foundation, my job was to help you do it. Because if that's the way you want to funnel it, then that's great. We don't have to have the money under our roof. We just want to know that your support will come to us, just as you want it to come.
We do have one comment from Pam Hogan. She talked about, in her experience, gifts to government agencies may qualify as tax deductible if it is given for public benefit and not to individual. She said, I appreciate your suggestion the client speak with the charity prior to listening in, or listening in, identifying the charity. Again, having that conversation is really important between the advisor, the donor, and the charity to make sure, one, it's a gift that they can accept and it makes sense in the sense of what the work and the focus of that nonprofit is.
I'm attempting to, oh, what happened here? Advance the slide.
Okay. There you go, Jim.
Okay, now I got to
And
get
really
back.
quickly, before we proceed to the next slide, I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that the IE Giving Hub, which I can drop into the chat, it's going to be available in the summer. We are going to be working with those local nonprofits that might be connected to a national brand. I know my history was with United Way for 16 years. And so it is really important with those larger nonprofits, as we discussed, to understand kind of those nuances. And unfortunately, it's not a one size fits all, as many of you know. So we're hoping that the IE Giving Hub, it will have the financial information that you need, as well as some of that information that hopefully will be helpful to you, so you understand, you know, the connection. And then again, just to reiterate, if it's not there, we're happy to be the conduit, similar to what Elizabeth said, to support you and your client to get their donor's intent, you know, where they want it to go when they pass on.
Jose, could you go to the previous slide real quickly?
Sure.
I mentioned that we would talk about some of the things that could go wrong. And so Marcia talked about a donor who'd set up a named scholarship fund with strict parameters. So you might give us some likeness. What challenges came about as a result of this?
So boring. Okay.
That really was an example of somebody else, but I can tell you that if you set up a gift and you have really high restrictions, I'm thinking about one of my clients who is 85 or something, worked very hard, worked 2-3 jobs when his kids were growing up, now expects his grandkids to work the same way, and they don't. They're this Generation Z and their lifestyle is entirely different. When he set up his donor or his plan, he didn't take that into consideration. And I think that's part of what happened here with this farming thing. They set up 10 objects that they had to do to be able to do it and to be able to get the scholarship. And they can't, this generation doesn't do that kind of stuff. And they don't do it the exact same way. And it makes it much more difficult to get it. So then you have a problem.
There's issues of sometimes the trustee not being proactive. And obviously, we had dealt with this. We were notified often by legal counsel that we were named in this will or named in the trust. And then we attempted to be very nice and proactive with the, the executor, executrix, or the trustee. And sometimes, like Joanna has experienced, you find the trustee not being proactive. You want to give us enlighten us a little bit, Joanna?
I can give you an example that I had that was exactly this, where the family member was the successor trustee after mom died. And there was a bunch of family members and a few charities. It was a pretty good size estate. And mom had a portfolio that had a couple of really large amounts of stock in it. And usually what a trustee does when they know they're going to make distributions, if there's no time horizon left, they need to turn it to cash. Well, this trustee didn't turn it to cash. They were afraid to do anything. They didn't know what they were doing. They were afraid what to do. The attorney encouraged them and finally said, you know, you really shouldn't be doing this. He turned it over to me and I turned it to cash, but we took about a $500,000 loss from date of death that we shouldn't have had to take. And it was awkward because the charities were a little uncomfortable about that because they were supposed to get what they were supposed to get. And they're fiduciaries for their charity as well. So it just became awkward. It's better when you make sure that your fiduciary in your plan is able to do the job and do it properly so that charities get what they're supposed to be getting along with the other beneficiaries.
Yeah, Elizabeth, you have anything you want to add to this?
No, I mean, I think I just really echo what Joanna says is, you know, both on the client side and naming the right trustee, which is someone who recognizes the value of getting good advice as they're implementing a plan. And then also on the side of a charity, and just, you know, keeping good track of the bequests that have been left to you and following up on them. Because a lot of charities are uncomfortable kind of bugging a trustee or an executor and saying, what's going on? When am I getting my money? But sometimes you need to do that to kind of hold them accountable. And so figuring out that dance is important.
Yeah, and I just from my own experience, in fact, I'm working with an organization right now, helping them set up a bequest management program because I was brought in to kind of oversee what was going on. And as a result, we found out how much wasn't going on and how inactive some of the trustees and executors were, but we were able to recover some money. It's just important here to be proactive. Let me just end with the John and Melina Charitable Trust. This was a wonderful couple, gave a piece of rental property to a charitable trust in the late 90s. We were adamant about being their own trustee. He was an engineer, felt he could do it all, and didn't think it was that complicated. About 6 years after the trust, he unfortunately became ill and passed away pretty quickly. Melina, darling lady, fortunately, she hired some good people to help her. And Melina passed away. And the charity went to try and get her, had heard that her passing and contacted, well, can we get the remainder? Well, it turned out that the attorney who drafted the document never named a trustee after John and or Melina. And had there been an extra sentence or two about, you know, a successor trustee, local trust company, whatever, or even named a trust company or a trustee, it would have been, unfortunately, because of that lack of that sentence or two, there was a needless day and there were significant charges and legal expense because of the estate issues that, you know, unfortunately ate into what would have normally gone to the charity. Jose, let's go to the next slide. Introducing the subject of philanthropy. I think this is always interesting. Who does it? Well, I think everyone on this call today has the opportunity to introduce the subject of philanthropy. And it's not how much do you want to leave to charity, it's just what role does philanthropy play in your estate? If you won the lottery, what would you do? And almost everybody says, well, if I won the lottery, my good, I'm going to give some money to charity. Well, you've already won the lottery. You have something. What if you left 90% to your heirs and 10% to charity? Well, I could probably do that. Well, there's some organizations that are important to you. I think just having that conversation. Interestingly, the U.S. Trust study of the philanthropic conversation found that 1/3 of the respondents would switch to a new advisor if that advisor could talk to them meaningfully about philanthropy. And Fidelity did a study and said families that are engaged in the philanthropic activities are happier and closer. And I know some of my friends at Northern Trust have told me that they almost force feed the conversation about philanthropy. And it's amazing how many people say, well, I don't know how to do this. And then it opens up a whole nother door, and all of a sudden you can't believe what happens. I'll share my quick personal experience. I had a client who, you know, he was philanthropic. He'd done a couple of charitable trusts, but his wealth had grown demonstratively in the last couple of years. And I said to him, I said, you know, you really don't need these income from this charitable trust. You've got income from all these other sources. Why don't you do some of your giving while you're living? And all of a sudden, we undid a couple of the charitable trusts, funded a fund at the local community foundation. And I can assure you, this man who was in heart failure, has a couple other issues going on, probably was destined for an early grave. Because of the new life he has, this new enthusiasm he has of giving away money, it's amazing. And it's changed his life. And in fact, it changed his life so much that his estate is creating a foundation that his niece will run for 5 years. He doesn't want this thing to go on infinitum. He wants his family engaged, that they have 5 to 10 years to give away all the money out of this foundation. But talk about a new lease on life. It's amazing. Elizabeth, I'm sure, and Joanna, you've had some experience with families who've dealt with these things.
Absolutely. It does make families closer and happier. And plus it keeps them alive longer, I think.
I think when you have meaning and purpose in your life, that you will live longer.
Have you not noticed that every single person that does one of these kinds of giving, it seems like they live longer?
Any
There are
charity that
studies
issues
that
gift,
show that.
yeah, any charity that issues gift annuities knows that, my God, these people are living into their life expectancy and beyond. Which is a good thing. All right.
Our experience, Jim, is we had a client a couple of years ago who was 100 years old and decided, he was 103, excuse me. His wife was 100. They decided doing a charitable gift annuity at 103. And they continued to live on after the new annuity was established. So it's just very interesting to see how people, through gifting, it can affect them psychologically.
It's always great for them to see how the charity will actually use the money.
How important is that?
Yeah, and then that may increase their charitable contributions just because they like what's going on.
Yeah, so that's a great lead in. Jose, the next slide. I titled this, Do Your Giving While You're Living, like I was just talking about. Not everybody can do this, but more and more people today are doing some kind of giving while they're living. Probably because they have a relationship with the charity. The charity is doing the things they want. They're in concert with the management and the mission of the organization. And more importantly, as Marcia pointed out, they want to see the impact that their gift is making. I'm aware of a situation where a person started giving to a scholarship fund. And about 5 years later, the development officer in charge of this invited this person to meet some of the scholarship recipients. She tripled her gift after that luncheon because she saw the impact. It was great. Again, you can make the gift outright. You can make it through a charitable gift annuity, a charitable trust, blended gifts, something now, something later. Again, you're testing the organization with your current gifts to see how they're spending the money. Are they adhering to your restriction? Or if it's unrestricted, are they getting back to you? Are they accountable? Here's how we spent some of your money. More importantly, and then again, if there's an endowment, is there a gift agreement signed? How long will the endowment last? What's the spending policy of the organization? So on and so forth. Elizabeth, do you have any commentary you want to make about doing your giving while you're living? I think we probably see some of this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, for our clients who really care about the organizations they're supporting and want to see, something that matters to them implemented, giving while you're living just really enhances not only their ability to ensure that the purposes they care about are met, but also the enjoyment of getting to see it.
Marcia?
No, I agree. I think it's important, and they do absorb all of those good feelings, and then if not anything else, they feel better about what they did. And they may continue to increase the donations.
I couldn't agree more. What happens, I think, is that if they have a good relationship with the organization is meeting that relationship where they want it to be, and if they're bold enough to say, hey, would you consider adding to this from your estate? And I think you have to ask that question. If you don't, I think that's a mistake. And sometimes that's exactly what the donor is doing. They're testing and they're going, should I leave $350,000 to the scholarship fund when I pass away? Should I leave them my house because my kids don't want it? Who knows?
Well, you know,
Okay,
Jim,
next.
I wanted to add to the comment, and that is, you know, we work a lot with donors who want to make testamentary gifts when they pass away. And we start working with them and talking about the work that we're doing now, the impact we're having in our community. Many of these donors will then turn around and start doing gifts today. Originally, their intent was to set up a testamentary gift. But what we're finding is that once they understand the value of philanthropy and the impact of their gifts, as you mentioned, it really does make a difference in how they view gifting today when they're alive. So it makes a difference.
Yeah, and I think that's very important. A lot of giving today may not involve the advisors. Sometimes it does. I think more often than not, it should. It's nice to know if I make this gift, how does it affect my financial situation today, tomorrow, and in the future? A couple of things. Let's go to the next slide.
And Jim, I'm so sorry, but just one other quick
Sure.
thing around how we can help. Jose has access to actually being able to provide models for those
good.
conversations with your clients. We're more than delighted to take information and support that so they can see the benefit. A lot of times there's way more benefit to giving while you're living and getting to celebrate it, etc., and getting a great, you know, tax benefit or whatnot. So we do have ways to actually put those kind of models together so you can have really meaningful conversations with your clients if you don't already have that kind of software.
Yeah, what Bree is speaking about, and I was going to talk later more about the resources available at the foundation, is that we do have a license to offer charitable gift annuities because we're looking at income not only now, but also their ability to support a nonprofit upon their passing. So a giving tool like a charitable gift annuity, we have a license to offer that, charitable remainder trust, charitable lead trust. But what's important, what Bree is talking about, we have a software through a partner of ours, Crescendo, where we can actually create the illustration which shows if they make a gift, and depending on the dollar amount or the asset being gifted, basically what would be the charitable deduction for that gift, how much income they will receive for themselves, or if they have a partner or a spouse until they both pass away, and then where the remainder of and how much of the remainder would go to their favorite charity. So we can create these illustrations for you. And many of you I've worked with, and I've created these illustrations for you. It's been very beneficial because it really helps illustrate to the donor the direct impact of their gift as far as deduction, income for life, and the charity they want to support at the end, or create a legacy fund here at the Community Foundation. So thank you, Bree, for bringing that up.
Thank you. This slide now says testamentary transfers, you know, who's on the team, because this is where if you don't look to the entire team, I don't know if the gift is going to be as well thought out as maybe it could have been. Not that you can't do it on your own, but I think it's, again, more heads than one are better typically. And the more that client engages the team, the better. They may not know they need the team, but I think whoever has that initial conversation has to encourage them that, look, it's going to take a village. So obviously the donor, their spouse, their partner, and many times their family. I've had chances where I said, hey, do you want to include your family in this process? He says, well, yeah, I don't know. And sometimes I think I have to open the conversations. Well, let me suggest to you why you might want to think about it. It's up to you. But I think if your heirs have a better understanding now of what you plan to do, the better. And again, but that's, you have to, when do you engage the team? Sooner is always better than later. I guess that's an old adage. And the advisors include the attorney, the CPA, the EA, the trustee, financial planner, asset manager, charity. So let me just give you a quick example. I'm the charity representative. I'm talking to Barbara about a gift, something now and maybe something through her estate. And she's very excited about supporting a particular part of our breast cancer program. And she says, well, I'm gonna make a $3 million gift, and I'll tell you what, I will, I got to sell some stock, and I can, I'll have a check for you by Friday. And I said, whoa, Elizabeth, you know, you don't have to sell the stock. You could transfer the stock to us, and it's no different. You get the same deduction. In fact, it may be more beneficial to you because if you sell a stock and you have some gains, it might be taxable, and yeah, the deduction could wipe it out, but maybe it will, maybe it won't. Let's talk to your financial asset manager. And her first comment to me was, and this is a woman she owned half of a private company, non-publicly traded, but one of the largest private companies in America. And she said, "Is that legal?" And I said, "Very much legal, Barbara." And we got her asset manager on the phone. He said, "Oh, I've been waiting for this call for 5 years." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, she's got some stock. I've been trying to get her to move, but she won't move because of capital gains." And so she not only made the $3 million gift, when we created some testamentary plans for her, there were specific assets that the attorney, the accountant, and the asset manager all felt were more appropriate as a gift to the charity she wanted to support than to her heirs. So if Elizabeth and Joanna and Marcia, anybody want to add to this?
It is nice to be able to read the document before changes or clarification can't be made. Because like you were just talking about, if she would have gone ahead and sold that stock, what's done is done. You wouldn't have that option left. It's nice to have the team involved sooner so that you can make these changes that might benefit.
And I agree. And sometimes you have to be the devil's advocate.
This is really good reinforcement that the client should have a team and not just one person telling them what to do. And unfortunately, I run across that a lot. The team is important.
Yeah. And our next slide, maximizing the philanthropic impact. Again, donor and family can define the philanthropic mission. I mentioned the fellow who has a new lease on life and he's creating a foundation. He's engaged his entire family. He had no children, but he has some nieces and nephews he's extremely close to. And I mean, it's almost as if he was their father. And they are from a variety of different economic backgrounds, but they have all gotten on board. And he is so excited about their engagement again, and that they will help continue the legacy. And this holds true to the community foundation and the donor advice fund that he has. He kind of split it. Part of it is up to him who gets those proceeds, and the other is up to his family and a little family council. And when this family council gets together twice a year with a representative of the community foundation, the synergy in that room, the excitement that they have the privilege and the power to give away money, their whole outlook on life is greater. So it's important, and using an organization to help you research those organizations. You can vet different giving approaches. What effect would it have on the family finances now as well as the future? Are we going to do this as one-time giving, donor advice fund, private foundation, or all of the above? And staying connected. So Elizabeth, I'll let you maybe talk a little bit about some of these concepts.
Yeah, when I have a client who's willing to kind of spend the time to engage on what their philanthropic mission is, I love it because similar to what we discussed on the prior slide, it really gives you a chance while they're here to brainstorm ways to make sure that vision gets carried out. I'm working with a client now who has stage 4 cancer, and she was intending to leave a significant amount of her wealth to a private foundation that her kids are on the board of. And as we've discussed this philanthropic mission, it's become clear that her kids, who are wonderful, have very different philanthropic values than she does. And so because we're having these discussions while she's here, we've been able to identify some solutions to ensure that not only can her kids be involved, but that her philanthropic mission will get carried out. And I think a lot of times people assume their kids or loved ones will care about the things they do, and that just isn't always the case.
Agreed. Okay. We're running a little short on time, so I want to cover everything. So let's go to the next slide. This is engagement with when I talk about engagement with the charity. I think we'll just talk about number 3, remaining anonymous. Every one of you on this call today has probably experienced a situation where, well, I want to leave it to these organizations, but I really don't want them to know I'm leaving them this kind of money or I'm doing this kind of planning. Again, it was mentioned they want to kind of stay under the radar, stay in the background, not let their future plans be known, so to speak, for a litany of reasons. Trust me, the advisor making a call on behalf of the donor to the organization, that my donor has an intent of doing something like this, gives the parameters of what the gift might be restricted for. Can the charity fulfill this? These are all things that are very important to point. And again, it's the donor wants to communicate the intent and purpose of the gift, whether they're doing it directly and getting the gift agreement in advance. And there's nothing that says you can't get a gift agreement today for something that's going to happen at the end of my lifetime. I mean, that's reassurance to me that when the gift happens, they're going to deal with it this way, and getting some advice and counsel to help me draft the appropriate agreement and then get their sign off. My heirs will see that this was my intent, this was my purpose. You just need to make sure they do that.
Jim, that's a really good point, because when we work with clients who are doing testimony gifts or in their estate plans, they will create an agreement with us today, but the fund that they establish, their endowment fund that they establish here, doesn't get funded until the donor passes away. So the agreement's in place and everyone has agreed to it, including the attorney, their advisor, or their family. But it's really making sure that everything's in place, so when that person does pass, everything can move smoothly.
And so I'm going to let Elizabeth comment, because a lot of these things entail the fact that it doesn't have to be irrevocable today. It probably should remain revocable and give them the opportunity to address some of the issues here.
So, I guess I can reiterate what I had previously mentioned on the topic of anonymity, which is for a client that doesn't want the charity to know about them, their advisor can inquire on their behalf. And while, ultimately it's ideal if the gift agreement is with the donor and the charity directly and they know about it, we actually can do what Jose suggested through advisors to retain the anonymity while the client's living, if that's needed or desired by the client.
Terrific. Marcia, Joanna, anybody want to add to that?
I wanted to add one thing, and that was just the opposite. I had a little lady, she did a really nice plan. She went and told the charity, who did not have a plan giving department, I might add, that she had named them in her document. And several times she mentioned it again, and she got no call, she got no visit. A few years later, she changed her document and took care of the other charity that had been calling her and inviting her and stopping by. So many do want to be anonymous, and then there's others, they want you to follow up on them.
You're absolutely right, Joanna. They want to have they want communication with the charity.
Yeah.
And I know that's important for us, that, we maintain those relationships, we communicate with the donor. Even at the end of the day, they decide to do something different, we've been there to help assist them in their planning.
And I will make a comment here that my staff heard this from me 30 years ago. The biggest disease in America is loneliness and unimportance. And I think sometimes when people make some kind of philanthropic commitment to the Youre Trust and they tell the organization, it's incumbent upon that organization to pay attention. And that doesn't mean, well, send me a copy of the document. It means thank you very much for thinking of us and developing a strong stewardship program to stay in touch, because the donor has the right to change their mind. And they can add to it, they could subtract from it, you name it. But that's, it's very important. And I do think we had some donors who specifically did those annuities every other year at 5,000 or 10,000, just so they had somebody to go to lunch with twice a year. And you know what? If that's part of it, so be it. It's important. Again, I think addressing some of those issues are important. Let me go to the I think the next slide, and that is, again, and many of you people on the phone here to this conversation, they know that how people want to exercise their charity is full of a litany of opportunities, whether it's outright during their life, whether it's through their will, through their trusts, including beneficiary designations, which are on those things that are outside of the trust, like your 401k, it's still a 401k. Maybe it hasn't been converted to an IRA yet. Making sure those beneficiary designations are up to speed and in concert with your wishes. The value and the power of a charitable major trust, charitable gift annuities, life estates, bargain sales. I think bargain sales are one of the most underutilized techniques in charitable planning. The charitable lead trust, obviously made famous by the article in Fortune magazine about Jackie Kennedy, who, interesting enough, she'd set up the lead trust in her will, but it was subject to a disclaimer that her heirs never made. But she made the lead trust famous. Pay on death, transfer on death accounts. Again, how you want your gift perpetuated through an endowment, a donor advised fund, supporting foundation, private foundation, you name it. There's just a litany of ways to complete this. And the nice thing about—
Jim, do you want to make a comment about the bargain sale? That was interesting what you said, that it's underutilized. I'm curious.
Yeah, so I remember, this is personal experience. Years ago, I was talking to somebody about a charitable trust and giving a piece of real estate. And he goes, "What do you think?" And he says, "It all sounds really good, but my dad had a trust and it was nothing but a mess. We were always paying the attorney to do this and do that. I don't want to have a trust." "Oh, well, you like the idea that we talked about?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Well, we could do it this way. We could buy your apartment house today and we'll pay 60 cents on the dollar, and that's the cash to you. And that'll be a taxable event. And the 40% that you leave to us outright, that will be equates to an income tax deduction. That's what you." On the other hand, based upon your situation, I might suggest that, yes, we do a 60-40 split, if that's okay with you. We'll buy the 60%, but I know you don't want a big capital gain right now. So we could do an installment bargain sale, and we agreed to a 10-year buyout. It was an installment note. The nice thing about the fact that the foundation was the bank buying it, so to speak, we weren't going to retrade it. If I sold my apartment house to John Jones and I said, "You pay me 6.5% interest," and then the interest rates go down to 2 and 3, John Jones is going to come in and say, "Hey, I want to refinance with you." And I'm going to say, "No, I like the coupon income." John Jones can go to the bank and get refinance and buy me out. And I all of a sudden have a capital gain that may be adverse, or it may be adverse to the organization. The nice thing is with a charity, there's not going to be a lot of retrading, if any. And again, the gift is complete. The donor has a source of income for a period of years. In fact, the bargain sale we did, he died 5 years into the installment note, a tragic accident coming back from a fishing trip. But he named his 50% of the remainder of that note went to us, the organization, and 50% went to his 2 children. So there's a lot of flexibility in the planning process here.
I think that what that demonstrates, Jim, is really the creativity that when we talk about working with donors, about charitable gifting, there are lots and lots, as you can see, different avenues and options available. And I think these are ones that we as a community foundation have worked with some of you on, but I'm really pleased that some of the things that Jim has talked about today, as well as the rest of the committee. So we'll continue, Jim.
Yeah, let's just go to the next slide real quick. We talked about a couple ways you can document and find, whether it's a 501c3, a 501c4, or it could be anywhere from a 50c1 to a 50c9, who knows? Let's dot our I's and cross our T's. Remember, if it's a 501c9 supporting foundation, you can't make your qualified charitable distributions to a supporting organization. You have to give it to the public charity. You have to be very careful. And again, here's some, we talked earlier about the name, Guide Dogs for the Blind versus Guide Dogs of America versus Dogs for a Better Life. I can assure you they all deal with blind issues as well as disabled issues. And so it's very important to help the donor make sure it goes to the organization you want. And let's just go to the last slide. Because unfortunately, I think today we proved to you that this is out of the Wall Street Journal many years ago, but I never dreamed it would be so difficult to give away money. Again, there are I's to dot, T's to cross, and challenges to be met, but properly structured with advice and counsel from the team, more than likely, it can be done right the first time with flexibility. So thank you for your attendance. Are there any questions in the chat room that we could, or any member of the panel could address?
I think that most of the questions were raised, but there was one earlier from Ann Herring, which talked about, let me see, where's it at? She talked about, and I can't find it. It was here, and I apologize. It was.
Thank you all for putting up with us and our momentary technical difficulties, but I think in the end, if you want to copy the slides, I think Jose can accommodate that. Yes. There's a recording for I think some of your staffers should hear some of this.
Yeah, Ann Harry indicates one underused charitable tool is the IRA RMD to a charity if they don't need the distribution for their own income.
I didn't quite hear all that. Is that just a comment or a question?
It's a comment about just the use of IRA.
Absolutely. It's a very powerful tool. The Secure Act kind of cemented the fact that if you really want your IRA to go to your heirs and you want it to be spread more than 10 years, you might want to seriously consider a testamentary charitable remainder trust to accomplish that objective.
Yes. Well, I want to thank, I didn't see any other questions. I want to thank Jim and Joanna, Marcia, and Elizabeth for the presentation today. I just want to highlight a couple more things before we end the session. And that was, we talked earlier about how you could work with the community foundation. And there were a number of ways that we identified how we can work with you. One, the 2 different websites that we talked about today, we can provide that to you. But the other thing that was mentioned earlier, and I think Jim mentioned it, there are over 14,000 nonprofit organizations in Riverside, San Bernardino counties. And so when you sit down and talk to your clients about, I want to support a charity, sometimes that's not an easy answer to provide.
Too many options.
Too many options, 14,000. So a lot of times what will happen, advisors will call us and ask us to identify particular charities. And we work with many of these charities from both counties. So let's say, for example, you had an interest in someone around animal welfare or mental health or, racial and political equity. We can help identify those organizations. What we can do, we can provide you 3 names of organizations that we have worked with, that we vetted through the IRA website as well as Charitable Navigator to really make sure these are qualified organizations. We can assist to verify their standing. Also, with many of you, we can meet with you to discuss your clients' charitable giving options. As Jim identified, there are many, many different options available to them, both while they're alive and also those that are testamentary. Again, when they're alive, they can do donor advised funds, they can do scholarship funds, they can do designated funds, or they want to identify particular nonprofits they want to support, or they can do field of interest, which is kind of looking at a whole area, whether it's recreation, whether it's environmental, whether it's mental health. We will work with you on testamentary gifts. The bottom line is we're working with you to help create legacies for your clients. Jim highlighted some of the ways that people can give, cash and non-cash assets, life insurance, IRA rollovers. But one of the things he mentioned were pay on death. And that's an interesting way for donors to give, because sometimes they'll say, well, I'm giving all my wealth to my family and others that I want to support. And they may have $5 or $10 or $15 or $20,000 in their checking account or savings account. That is an area that they can identify as a simple form. They can go to their local bank or whoever holds those funds, say, I want to, when my passing, fill out a pay on death form, which identifies the remainder of whatever my checking or savings account could go to my favorite charity. So that's another way that people can give without being directly impacted by all the other assets they may have. So as you mentioned earlier, we do have charitable gift annuities and the crescendo illustrations. And again, many of you already know this, but I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that and we can assist you. I'm trying to see how we can stop share. There we go. Okay, good, we're back. So I want to thank everyone for being here today on behalf of the Community Foundation. I hope you found this of value. As Jim mentioned, we are going to be sending out to you this PowerPoint. Also, we recorded it. So if you're interested in receiving the recording, we will make that available as well. So Does anyone have any announcements they'd like to make?
I'm a proud grandparent.
There is one more thing, and that is Kim is going to provide a poll. I think to even take a poll. Hopefully, let me check to make sure that, because we've had, oh, there it is. So if you could answer the poll, we would appreciate it, because we're asking you about how you felt about today's presentation and what you learned about in the program. But more important, at the end, would you like to continue to do this on a Zoom-based process or in person? And I know there's pros and cons on both, because we're drawing advisors from throughout the 2 counties. So sometimes Zoom makes a lot of sense. So if you could fill out the poll, that would be great. And our next Professional Advisor Council meeting will be either at the end of August or in the beginning of September. Okay. And
Thank you all.
Jose? Oh, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead, Sui.
Oh, no, I was thinking of, talking about announcement. I do have announcement if you guys are interested to attend. Our bank is hosting economic outlook at Insight, and we're gonna have 2 outside specialists gonna come talk about the current economic with the interest environments and all that. So if it's any one of you interested, I'd be happy to send you guys the link.
Thank you, Sui. Anyone else have any comments? I really want to thank you for taking time out. I know you have very, very busy days and schedules, and we truly appreciate your participating today. I hope you learned a lot, and more importantly, that we're here to assist you.